Welcome back to the Dynamics Compass podcast, where we interview the experts so that you don't have to figure it out the hard way. Today's guest is Elif Item, CEO of Item by Item, who spent nearly 15 years in the D365 AX and F&O trenches. First as a consultant running major implementations, then as a partner director, keeping an eye on multiple projects at once, and now as the founder of her own training company, helping organizations actually get their teams ready for go live. She's seen enough F&O projects to know where the bodies are buried, and more importantly, how to avoid digging those graves in the first place. Elif's got strong opinions on why spending thousands of dollars on change management before you even designed anything is madness, and why your warehouse operators need a completely different training approach than your finance team. Let's dive in. Welcome, Elif.
Thank you.
Um,
Thank you for having me.
it is a pleasure. I know a lot of people know you already. You don't really need an introduction, but I'm going to ask it anyway to break some ice. Can you share with the audience a little bit about or something about yourself that not a lot of people know about you?
Probably say a lot of people know that I do come from a consulting background, into training, but I think maybe a lot of people don't know that training was always in my heart. Like even before my first D365 job, I worked for another technology company for many years before getting into the Microsoft space, and I was a trainer. I was teaching, that was before I had kids, before I was just sort of like juggling many different things in the family. I was teaching two types of classes. One class that was 1 week long, a functional class, and another class that's 2 weeks long. That was a technical class. At the time there was a lot of, this is many years ago, 25 years ago. And I
Yeah.
used to travel a lot. Like I would just go to all around the world teaching those classes. It was just a wonderful start to my career. I enjoyed it a lot. It wasn't done very often at the time, but it was a great start to my career. And I got to see a lot of different countries, a lot of different cultures. Yeah, I would say probably that's not something that people know about me. And maybe on the personal level, I'm a big plant mom, so I travel a lot, but I like to. We don't have any
Uh,
pets, but I love plants in my house, and they're like sort of my babies. My husband makes fun of me because in the morning I get up and I visit each one of them and see how they're doing. It's a little bit of a struggle to leave them for long periods of time, but that's sort of my little side project or hobby, let's say.
Do you name your plants?
No, I don't name my plants, but it's been interesting because this summer I basically traveled most of the summer and I wasn't home for almost 4 months, and other people were taking care of the plants, and it was pretty brutal to come back and see some of
My
them.
babies.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, some of them are still making. Like one of them is just still coming back. I was worried that he or she was not gonna make it, but
Th-
it looks like it's gonna make it.
They're
So
all traumatized. You can never
yes,
leave again.
exactly. They are traumatized. I am traumatized too. So I'm gonna have to have a different, better system for sure.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, good luck with that.
Thank you.
And thank you for that intro. That definitely breaks the ice. All right. First question. You've worked in the F&O space for nearly 15 years. First as a consultant running major implementations, then as a partner, now running your own training company. What patterns do you see repeated across F&O implementations when it comes to preparing organizations for go live?
I would say probably one of the biggest patterns that I see that ultimately doesn't help the F&O implementations is to see the change management and training as sort of like separate pathways or separate functions than the project management function. Or, I mean, they are sort of separate from the way that it works, but I think just seeing the training and change management activities as a sort of a side thing, not really seeing it as a part of the project tasks is one of the things I think that doesn't help to a lot of F&O implementations. When we see success in F&O implementations, really training and change management is sort of embedded into other project tasks, and that's when we see a lot more successful implementations, because ultimately adoption or better adoption is what makes F&O implementation successful. technology is important, how it's implemented is important, but if you cannot get people to use the software, you're not going to get the benefits that you've hoped you would get from the implementation.
Yeah. Is that just a lack of understanding of change management in general, or is that this component we'll see if we can save money, and if we have to, we'll bring it back in?
I think it's sort of both. I think culturally, the way that D365 implementations are sold by partners and Microsoft
Hmm.
separates the change management and training elements from the implementation elements. So I think that's sort of the starting point. So from the beginning, the conversation is around how much it's going to cost us to implement D365, and training and change management is not part of that conversation. At the end, that is also going to cost you money. So I think it makes maybe the implementation partners nervous to talk about that topic because it's one more thing that the customers have to pay for. So I think it's easier for them to just take this, I think we'll talk a little bit about it later on, the train the trainer approach, and then basically saying that you're responsible from training. So, and which I don't have any problems with. I think the expectation is there, but I don't think customers really truly understand. It's still going to cost them. The training and adoption is going to cost them, whether or not they do it internally with their internal resources or they hire someone else to do it. Somebody has to do it. I think the expectation that it's going to be somehow free because we are going to they're going to do it with internal resources. It's an understatement because
Yeah.
those resources are just not going to be able to do it alongside with all the things that they have to do still.
Yeah.
Um,
Which
uh, Go ahead.
No, you go. I was gonna say
Uh,
this ties into the next question, but finish what
Yeah,
you
I
were
was
gonna say.
also going to say that I think what I see in a lot of projects also, if the customer has project management team who has experience in implementing ERPs in the past, not even necessarily D365, I
Hmm.
tend to see a little bit better understanding of the importance of adoption and training. So they will have a different type of perspective and they will demand more from Microsoft or from the implementation partner, or they will seek other resources like my company and other organizations and say, we feel like this plan that we have in place is not going to be sufficient. So I think that also can play into making sure that certain resources and time is allocated to the adoption activities.
Yeah. Okay. That still ties in well with the next question indeed. Many companies budget significant resources for change management at the start of a D365 F&O project. From your experience, what's the biggest mistake organizations make when structuring their change management approach, and when should they actually be investing those resources?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think one of the challenges that we face in D365 F&O implementations is that there are a lot of situations where the change management resources don't have experience in actual D365 implementations. So
Hmm.
it's important, I think, for what I see is that when someone who's managing the change management activities don't understand the ebbs and the flows of a D365 implementation. So as implementers, we know generally how an F&O implementation goes. At the beginning, there's usually a design phase, and then from the design phase, a solution is decided, and then certain development activities goes on, testing and etc. So sometimes what I see when the change management is separated from the project management tasks, that there's a lot of front loading on a project with the change management activities when there's not even a solution at place. So I've seen a lot of projects, the project starts, the change management resources come in, and they don't have much to do at that point of time. They still can do things, but
Hmm.
there's no solution in place. There's not a lot of things are solidified yet. So what ends up happening in those types of scenarios, the budget and the money could be all spent and used in the first maybe 4 or 5 months of the project, and then you actually don't have the budget when you need it a little bit later in the project. So I think understanding this sort of fluctuations in activity within the project and which activities are relevant to your change management perspective and how it should be communicated to the rest of the organization, that's understanding that is going to help a lot. And that's why I recommend to a lot of the customers that I talk to is that you are definitely going to be better off with working with change management agents or change management organizations that has experience in D365 implementations, so that they can bring that into the table, because not every ERP is implemented the same way and not every technology is implemented the same way, for sure. An ERP implementation is very different than a CRM implementation. A CRM implementation is very different than a customer insights implementation. The type of audience that you're going to be working, type of learners you're going to have are very different. The length of the project is very different. So all of those things, just sort of play into that experience. Just like anything else, if you're looking for an implementation partner, you are looking for someone who has knowledge in your industry. So if you're in the food industry, you're not going to probably go with an implementation partner who has a lot of experience in construction, and vice versa. So you want someone who understands your language. And I think companies should look into the similar perspective on the change management side too, is that you want to work with a change management organization who has experience in D365 implementation, so that they can bring that into perspective.
Yeah. It sounds like there's probably a misperception as well, where people think change management is more mindset, psychological, like resistance to change, overcome that. But you're saying no, they also need to, yes, you're helping people go through the change, through their journey, but also they need to still know dynamics, F&O, to even better understand the journey that these end users are on.
Well, I mean, yes, I am absolutely saying that. Now, they don't need to necessarily know dynamics, like click by click know dynamics, because that's more on the training resources. So like maybe we just categorize this sort of, there are three different helpers to a D365 implementation. So there's the implementation partner that's basically driving all the implementation tasks. Then the change management and training, I sort of put them into like side by side, two different buckets, because the training resources that you want to work with in an implementation, they are absolutely required to know the product. That's the whole idea. They're supposed to teach you the product, right? The change management, I'm not saying that they need to know the product like as an expert as far as understanding the ERP itself, but I think they need to understand the project, like how to do the type of project that you're doing. Like if you're doing an F&O project, they need to have an understanding of what that project is and what kind of tasks that are going to be performed in that project and different players, and how to sort of translate this change that's going to come into the organization. Yeah, from that perspective, for sure, that I think the more they understand, the better chance that you're going to have of success. Because if you don't have that, then you are also going to be teaching the change management group that how your implementation is running, how the implementation is going to do, what are the things that are important that needs to be communicated. Occasionally that might be okay. Maybe you find a change management partner that you really like about their perspective, but they don't have as much D365 experience. I'm not saying that will never work, but you just need to understand the work that it's going to require for them to get up to speed on how an F&O implementation runs.
Yeah. No, that makes complete sense. You were saying earlier, no point or not really justified to spend a lot on change management upfront. However, there's also a common belief that you shouldn't train users too early because they'll forget everything by go live.
Yeah.
But you do advocate for continuous training throughout the project lifecycle. Can you walk us through what a smarter training timeline looks like across an 18-month F&O implementation?
Yeah, sure. So I think this sort of like ties back into that topic of separating training from change management a little bit. I think, as a general name for change management, we know it encompasses all change an organization go through, but I think it benefits us to separate a little bit the nuts and bolts type of training element from the change management element. So I do advocate for change management to start a little slow and pick up speed a little bit later in the project, but I do advocate the exact opposite for training. So the training is instrumental in making D365 projects a success. We're always sort of like coming back to this conversation about the implementation partner and how a company works with the implementation partner. So the implementers are knowledgeable about the product, but they don't necessarily know exactly how your business works. The consultants are supposed to come in. They're supposed to understand your requirements and help you to design a solution that's going to work. Your job as a customer, you know your business, but you don't know the product. So your job is to learn the product to best of your ability so that you can fill in that gap, so you can become a productive participant in this process. And partner is supposed to learn your business and you're supposed to learn the product. So to achieve that, we first have to make sure that group of users are really on the forefront of the training initiative. They need to learn how the standard product works, and they need to not learn it just like surface level, but they need to learn it on a deeper level so that they can help making those types of decisions. So one of the things that happens a lot of the times is that training doesn't even start until the project starts. So now you're in a position that you maybe have 10, 15 people in your core team. They're supposed to attend all of these meetings, but at the same time, they're supposed to learn all of the D365 functionality and help consultants make decisions. So what we see a lot of the times that they're not necessarily willing to make decisions. They will drag their feet and they will be like, I don't feel comfortable making a decision like that because I don't understand the implications. So it's going to be very important. It is very important, in my opinion, to start that training journey as early as possible, especially if you have a chance before even the project starts, that you give them an opportunity to spend some time in the product, learn the standard functionality, and then when they are at the same table with the partner, that is going to help them tremendously. We see this in the projects that we provide training for, and especially if the customer is like, I'm working with the customer today. We did an onboarding call. Their project is not going to start until January, so we have started basically training now, and they're going to have probably around 2 months of training, definitely before even the partner comes in, to go through the design sessions. And in similar projects like this, that we've seen tremendous success because there's better understanding on both sides of how the solution definitely should work. So to answer your question further, like if I was to think an 18-month project, right? Like what would be my dream scenario of how to train? I would definitely start probably 2 weeks prior to 2 months prior to project start. I would start in some convenient way, which is what we provide, is the online training. They don't need to leave their desks. They can do it as they're going through their normal jobs. I would also give them access to a standard D365 instance alongside with the training so that they can apply what they're learning from the online training to the actual ability to perform the tasks. Then what will happen is I would continue when the partner comes in, when the beginning of the project, partner will most likely do the train the trainer. That is basically almost majority of the projects are sold that way by the partners. And then that is even going to be more successful for the partner because the people who are going to come to the train the trainer sessions will already know very basics of D365, so the partner resources can get into much more detailed, much more difficult scenarios. Then I would say the design period will go on, and we will just keep continuing to support that initial group of learners, which are your core team. Then around the time, probably maybe 4 or 5 months into the project, when you start to test the system, that's when you will bring additional resources from the organization, which is subject matter experts, then you would have to train those people as well. Maybe not on the standard D365, but maybe just on the design D365. And then training goes on basically all the way till a little bit before go live. And then what I like to do is to use this period to slowly build training materials for the go live instead of waiting for the go live to happen and on just a couple of months before the go live starts creating training materials. And then you're going to see a big spike in the learner count during the go live because you have to train everybody at the same time. And I usually recommend a hybrid approach, some online training, some in-person training, depending on the type of learners that you have. And then post go live is another period that is not very heavily talked about. But if you follow a structure like this, making the training a priority all throughout the implementation, by the time you go live, you're already going to have a training program that you can use post go live. So now you don't have to think about what are we going to do when we hire new people, etc. So it all comes together, not only for go live or also post go live for cross-functional training and new employee training.
Yeah. Okay. That's a very clear schedule of what the ideal plan looks like.
Yes.
You mentioned train the trainer. And on an earlier call that you and I had, you mentioned that most partners offer train the trainer as their standard approach that often does leave a gap. When should a company plan to bring in dedicated training resources beyond what their implementation partner provides? And how do they know if they need more than just train the trainer?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think there are a couple of ways that they know. One is we touched upon this a little bit. It's if the customer has resources that have experience doing ERP implementations in the past, they will have a pretty clear idea if the train the trainer approach is going to work in their organization. Because every organization is different. You have to understand the culture of your organization, and you have to understand the type of resources that you have and what % of those resources are allocated to a project. So many years ago, when I was a project manager, I did a project, and in that particular project, the core team members were 100% on the project. So they were taken from their jobs for the purpose of the ERP implementation. And then these people were responsible from attending design sessions, doing everything related to project. And the expectation was that they were also supposed to train everybody else. That's what train the trainer means. That the partner trains a subset of the learners, and that subset of the learners are responsible from training the rest of the organization. So if you have 100% dedicated resources, it's possibly okay that those resources will be able to train the rest of the organization. Again, other factors play into this. How many people they need to train, how many locations the organization have, are they physically separated and they would have to travel to different distribution centers, stores, all of this sort of play into this. But on average, if I have to generally answer this question, on average, you don't see that people assign 100% dedicated resources to implementations. What's usually expected is those people are expected to do a part of their job still, and they're also expected to help with the implementation. That tends to be maybe 50% of their time. So it's very clear as soon as the project starts that when those resources are attending design sessions, writing documentation, and testing the system, that it's going to be very difficult to also for those people to create training materials and deliver those training materials. And to make things more complicated also, that just because you're a good core team member, that doesn't also necessarily mean that you're a great trainer. So you can be great at designing systems, testing system. You can be very respected in your organization, but you may not have the skill set that's going to help you to train others. So I would say majority of the time organizations will need additional help if they are solely relying on train the trainer approach. If they are mindful of this and know the sort of they think it ahead, they can spread these resources. They can take advantage of I would say activity times in the implementation to basically to their advantage to create training materials for the future. But if they sort of ignore this and then think that we're going to just figure it out when it gets closer to the implementation, most likely they're going to have to bring external resources. They will either have to bring external resources, they will ask to partner to bring additional resources to either create training materials or deliver training materials, or they will ask another company, like not the implementation partner, but maybe a training partner like us or somebody else, to come in and help with training. I'm of the mindset of, just do what you can when you can, rather than just wait until the last minute to just sort of shove everything together. But I'm also very much so aware of difficulties of an F&O implementation. So I think sometimes we are in wishful thinking mindset that things are gonna just go a certain way, and then until we don't realize it. Like until we actually there's a situation of, okay, like this is not going to work for us, then we have to do something about it.
Yeah. Okay. I was going to say that train the trainer. I'd like to think that I was back at school that I was good in algebra, but then I had to try and explain it to other kids, and like no chance. There was no way people understood me.
But it's also it's a great way to learn, just so you know. Like, I mean, we always talk about this when I was in my first job as a trainer, like learning the software. It's a completely different type of learning when you're learning yourself to use something versus when you're learning something to teach to somebody else. Because you have to have I would say you have to really organize things in your mind in a way that can be communicated, because you can understand it and it intrinsically makes sense to you how to use the software. But then I live this myself, because every time there's a new functionality that comes out with F&O, we are working on creating new training materials. I'm actually working on right now Copilot in finance, and then if you talk to someone technical from Microsoft, they talk about how wonderful all the things that the Copilot in supply chain. We already did the Copilot in finance, and I'm working on the supply chain one. But every time my perspective is, okay, what's the scenario that I'm going to be able to show the learner that he's going to be able to go through the scenario using this? It's very different than, oh, this is sort of a cool functionality and it's nice to see it, but it's like, when you're teaching someone something, you're constantly thinking from the usability perspective. So the implementation partners with the trainer approach, it makes sense for them, because I think to have training resources for an organization, it's harder, because training resources are short term. So if you want, you're in the resource world, you probably know about this very well as well. You don't hire someone to do training for 4 months. You want someone to come in and maybe do a couple of weeks, maybe a month. So managing those resources, scheduling them into projects can be quite of a challenge, for sure.
I think I can guess the answer here a little bit, but so you work with customers at all stages, and all ages probably as well. Some before kickoff, some mid-project, and some right before go live, and even some who've been live for years already. If you could only give one piece of advice to a company that's 2 months away from starting their F&O implementation, what would it be?
I would say probably one would be start early. I think it's just basically start training early as possible. And this is supported by our customers who just like we talk a lot about like what sort of like how did this training experience go about, like what did we do right, what did we do wrong, if we were to do this again what would we do different. And when I talk to our customers, even the ones that has started early, they say I wish we had started earlier, or I wish we had invested more time and effort into actually learning how the solution out of the box works. It's a different world right now because 10 years ago, AX was being implemented by heavily enhanced and customized. So the Microsoft was selling it like that. It's basically you can change the software any way you like and fit it to your needs. But today's world is completely different. You know, with all the continuous updates, everybody wants to implement as standard as possible. And the only way to achieve that, you really have to know standard really well. You know, you have to be able to understand the functionality in depth. Sometimes even repurpose a functionality that is not like exactly what you want, but maybe use it for a different purpose. All of that can only be achieved if you have a great understanding of what the software is capable for. I would say that's my number one. If I can have a second one in the list,
You may.
I may. I would say probably the second one is to have an internal training champion that advocates for training in every possible way during the implementation. It takes advantage of different activities, actions for the purpose of training. If there's a presentation that's going to happen, that person can record that presentation, split it into multiple videos, repurpose it, things like that. That training champion's purpose is really to look at every interaction, every scenario, every meeting from the perspective of how can I take advantage of the situation for the purpose of training. And when you have someone like this in your implementation, you are going to take advantage of so many of the things that you normally do that can be geared and used towards training for the long term.
Just clarifying, this is different from having a change management lead or a project manager.
That's correct. So this is basically so the project management person is going to be primarily focused on implementation tasks, configuration, migrations, integrations, testing, all of that stuff. Change management lead or change management person, and they don't have to be all individual people, but just obviously with the roles. Change management person is going to make sure that all groups are a part of the adoption process and the different needs of different groups are met. Some are just basically they receive information about the project. They are not going to be heavily affected about the project, but different groups will need different type of training. Different groups will need different type of communication. And if there's a struggle with a particular group, you need to focus on that group to actually make sure that obstacles are removed, whatever those obstacles are, to make sure that their adoption is a success. So the change manager's role is more like making everything work together, just taking what's being implemented and seeping it through the organization. Now, if that requires more training, if that requires more meetings, if that requires more communication, some of that can be taken care of by the change manager, or they can tap into trainers and bring them into the fold. The training champion is more, I don't really see this person as maybe, it doesn't have to be a full-time person, but someone who has that mindset of looking at activities, making sure that if somebody is struggling, is that person gets the training that they need, but also different activities that are performed in the implementation can be repurposed for the purpose of training. So training is sort of in the mindset of that person throughout the different phase of the implementation.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that. And I only asked that question because indeed we started this conversation with saying, well, there's still this misunderstanding that training is seen as same as change management, but it should be seen as distinct. So I wanted to make sure that people understand the difference between your training champion and your change management lead and your project manager. So thank
Yep.
you for answering that. Last one. For a CFO or IT director who's watching this and realizes their current F&O implementation approach might be missing some of these elements, what's one thing they should do this week to course correct?
I would say probably the first thing that they maybe can first see is that training and change management is not sort of a like there's not a silver bullet solution for the training or change management. It's basically, I always tell this to the different customers that I work with, it's like to be successful in adoption you need to have a toolbox of tools. So there's not like just a single thing that's going to make you successful. Like we've talked about so many different things, right? Starting training early, having different mediums of training, like we offer online training, there's in-person training, there's virtual training. We already touched upon that you have office people, where you have warehouse managers, you have POS operators, the type of learners that you have in different types of locations. A lot of people may be in your headquarters, the other people might be in DC. So one way of training one group may work superbly, versus if you uptake that way of training to another group, it may not be successful. Exactly. So I think understanding the complexity of the situation and just sort of having these different resources and different options for training and change management is what I would recommend to them. And they can seek these out. There are many options out there, there are resources out there, but probably if they've already started the project, if the project is going on and they feel like, okay, we're not really doing superbly on training and change management, I would probably say to seek out someone internal who is going to make training a priority. I would start with that, having that champion who is going to look for resources and also empower that person to seek out resources. So like if that person feels like our core team is not well trained on F&O, should we bring someone in for a few days to improve their knowledge? Should we sign them up for an online training platform? Should we sign them to send them to somewhere for training? Or whatever the solution to that particular challenge, if you have someone with that mindset and authority also, then that's going to make things a lot more easier, because you won't be able to look into each problem in detail yourself.
Yeah. And I wanted to add, because it sounds like we're talking about training, and it sounds simplistic and like, oh, it's training. But if you don't get your users to fully utilize the system, you're wasting the investment on your F&O implementation, your F&O instance. So you want your users to use it as well as possible, and not like, oh, I don't know how to use it, so I'll only do what I know and the rest leave it untouched. Because that's just a waste of investment. That's wasted money. And
Yeah, we do. I mean, we talked about this a little bit, but we do have some customers that have started to use our online training platform after they went live. And honestly, when I started this company, I didn't think I would have customers like that, because I thought that, oh, they would just, because we're providing standard D365 training, right? So we're not like, it's not customized. I mean, we can customize it if we're working with the customer during the implementation. But the bottom line is, if you're already live and if you are using our platform out of the box, you're just going to get standard D365 training. And I get so many comments from like the actual users and managers are like, oh my God, like I didn't actually know we could do this. I couldn't, like, I really didn't realize we could filter it this way, or I didn't realize we had this option. So I think D365 F&O implementations are quite intense, because so many things go on at the same time. You're trying to make adjustments and integrations and all of this stuff, and there's tremendous focus on making the solution work. But translating that solution to people's day-to-day lives are a lot of the times are overlooked. And And also, it's a little bit human nature, in my opinion, to think that, well, this is going to happen sometime, but not necessarily now. Like
Yeah.
even when you put people into training, when you give them different resources, I think sometimes people don't have that mindset. The project gets delayed a couple of times and they have this thing is, I'm going to just figure it out when it happens. And all of a sudden you're live. Right, so all the training dollars, all the resources have already spent. So now you're live, and now you are actually heavily using it now. But now you don't have necessarily the resources that can explain to you why you have to do the certain things in a certain way. That's probably another topic that should be discussed. Like what does training dollars should cover. Right now, a lot of the times the training dollars or the change management dollars sort of end with the project, right? You go live, you're just sort of like your project budget is done. Even when we do go live training, like if we're even, let's say for warehouse workers, maybe we are doing 2 months of training. When we do that, the 8 weeks, we tend to put 5 weeks before go live and 3 weeks post go live. So one of the reasons is exactly this, because you can only teach them so much before actually things happen, right? You're teaching them with fictitious data, test data on all of this, and all of a sudden you're live and everybody's like, oh my God, what do I do? What do I do? And then, but if you allocate the resources 3-4 more weeks after go live, then you're just helping them with real stuff, the things that they have to perform on a day-to-day basis. So
it's like you're training them in a simulator first,
yes,
and then afterwards now they gotta go on the real road, and then they just have to recognize like, oh, this is actually very similar. I know how to do this.
I know. I mean, today it's interesting because when I started to do AX implementations, one of my big projects we called it the go live simulation. Now everybody calls it conference room pilot. It's sort of like change into that name, but when we did the go live simulation, it's exactly like that you're basically just sort of simulating go live, but how much you're simulating post go live, because a lot of the work goes on to getting to go live. You simulate your migration of data, you simulate your configuration, you simulate if your integration are working, and then of course hopefully the actual conference room pilot itself post the simulation should cover what is going to happen after go live. So I'm a huge advocate of that. I think that's just you doing that over and over multiple times. It's definitely going to get you much closer to where you need to be at go live.
Yeah, I think that's really good. So for anyone who is watching this and thinks and is now convinced like, oh yeah, training has been an afterthought for us, so we just put it in the change management bucket but not really thought about it deliberately, and they want to ask you some questions, how can they get hold of you? Where can they find you?
Yes, yeah, definitely. We'll put my contact information here with the podcast, but they can always reach out to me through LinkedIn, so they can message me through LinkedIn. They can go to our company website, www.itembyItem.co. I also have a separate website. I'm a Microsoft MVP, so I do a lot of community work, a lot of work around training beyond my company work. So my other website is called D365 trainingclinic.com. So they can go in there, and the information there is all free and available. They can download lots of different training resources. They can also send me a message from there as well. So yeah, I think I can be easily found, especially probably LinkedIn and the website are the best option.
Yeah. Can't believe I left out the MVP part on your introduction. Should have started with that.
Oh, that's okay.
Sorry.
It's good. Yeah, it's perfectly good. I think there's another MVP, and she jokes is like, how do you know if someone is an MVP? And then the answer is because they'll let you know. So, which is true.
Yeah. Like you worked really hard. It's a lot of effort to get there, so it's worth.
It
It's
is.
justified.
It's a great community. It's I think it's the initial effort is one thing, but it's I think what is not known by a lot of people is that you have to reapply every year. So it's
Yeah,
not like something that you're just given and keep, but you have to show the work every year. But it
every
is a
year.
wonderful community. Everybody is very helpful. I was having some technical issues yesterday, and one of the other MVPs helped me to solve it. It's
Community.
definitely a great community. I'm honored to be a part of it for sure.
Yeah, no, that's great. Well, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and breaking, or not breaking, but enlightening people on their misunderstandings, misconceptions of change management. So thank you so much for coming on today, Elif.
Thank you for having me. It was a pleasure.
All right, you take care.
Take
Bye.
care.
Thanks for watching this episode on the Dynamics Compass podcast. We decided to launch this podcast after having spoken to a lot of people in the community who seem to be looking for answers to the same questions. So then we decided, why don't we find experts in the market that have the answers, interview them, and then release that information for free to help everyone progress their Microsoft Dynamics journey. So we hope that you found this video very informative and helpful for you to continue your journey and keep moving forward. If you would like to hear about any other topics, please write to me on LinkedIn. Email me, Rory at thegoodtalent.co, and we'd be happy to have a look. We'll look for the experts that have the questions, have the answers. We'll interview them, and it will be freely available to you. Again, thanks so much for watching. Thanks for your support as well, and I hope you have a great rest of your day. Bye.